Sol, I am Skeggy Vetter, and welcome to the Norse Code. That's right, I'm still alive. So I guess I owe you a bit of an explanation as to where I've been. For those of you who don't already know, I'm very much involved in the paranormal. I have my own ghost hunting group. Through that group, I make and sell ghost hunting equipment. I also work with another company who does ghost hunting events around the country. We teach people how to ghost hunt, get you into hard to get into locations. All that on top of my 9-to-5 job. And then the Norse Code, even though these are only like half-hour-ish episodes, they still take many hours of research before and many hours of editing after. So my plate's pretty full. And then I went ahead and added a Ouija board museum on top of that. The Empty Casket Talking Board Museum is my new endeavor. We're traveling with it for about once a month and taking it around, showing people the history of spiritualism and Ouija boards and all that fun stuff. So with all of that going on, there's just not enough hours in the day. Something had to take a hit, and unfortunately it was the Norse Code. So I've been really busy with other things, but Norse Code's not going anywhere. I want to keep this going. It's just going to be a bit more sporadic as I have time and ability to do more episodes. Hopefully things kind of even out at some point and I can get back into being somewhat rhythmic with episodes coming out. So bear with me, I'm not gone yet. So in this episode, I want to talk about speaking with the dead. Now, a couple weeks ago, at one of my Talking Board Museum events, I was at Belladonna's Lair in Milton, Pennsylvania, and I met a gentleman there, James, who is a fan of the Norse Code and a fan of mine, and he helped us set everything up. And then I got to talk to him for a little bit. Super nice guy, and one of the questions that he was asking was, how do you talk to the dead? Like, what can you do to speak with the dead? And so this episode answers that question, and it's dedicated to James. So James, if you're watching, this is all for you, bud. So what I'd like to do with speaking with the dead is kind of break it up into 3 sections. First, we'll talk about ancestor worship and death in general, and how it pertains to the ancient world. How the Norse, as far as we know, would speak with the dead and honor the dead, and then some modern ways that you can do it. So in our modern society, this is very much a place where death is feared. The whole purpose of a funeral home is to take death out of the home. Prior to the early 1900s, your living room or parlor or whatever you want to call it was the funeral home. That's where you would display the dead bodies and people in your family. And after the Victorian era, that started kind of going away, and we kind of developed this fear of death. But that's a very modern viewpoint of it. For all of human history, death was embraced. It's something, it is the one thing that every single person has in common. We're all gonna die. So people would take death, and it's part of life. People are gonna die around you. You're going to die. So why not embrace it? Make it something that is more than just the end. It's a lot of the reason why religions exist in the first place, is we want to know what happens after you die and where your soul goes and all that. And so, if you ask an anthropologist, they'll tell you that, a lot of the religions of the world came from, we need to have some explanation as to what comes after life. because we don't want it to end at death. Which is an interesting concept for sure. Whether or not that's true, or if any one of these religions is true, maybe they're all true in some way. But the point here is death was a common occurrence. It was embraced. There's several ancient civilizations where they would keep a dead relative's head and keep that skull in the house. And when they needed advice, they'd go talk to the skull. They'd have a collection of ancestors' skulls that you can go and ask advice, pray to, honor, worship. And that falls all the way up to the Norse. For the Norse and just about every ancient culture, your ancestors are everything. Just think about it. Without your ancestors, you wouldn't be here. It takes every ancestor that came before you for you to be here. Whether you agree with them, whether they were good people, doesn't matter. The fact that they existed and passed down the genetics comes to you today. So it's very important, I believe, and the ancient Norse believed, to honor your ancestors, to take part in speaking with your ancestors, to pray to your ancestors, to worship your ancestors, to give them offerings. So how would the Norse do that? Well, there's quite a few different ways. Every individual probably had their own individual method on how they would do that. But in general, a lot of times what you'd see is an ancestor's altar. It's an altar for your ancestors. They have altars to the gods, they have altars to the ancestors. And you're not praying to them as gods, per se, but you're trying to honor them, to show them that what they have created, which is your lineage, is not done in vain, and hopefully they can step in and help you from time to time. So what do you put on an ancestor's altar? Well, you would want to put, in modern day, you would want to put pictures of your relatives, items that are connected to your relatives. The hell was that? I have a directional microphone, so I don't know if that picked it up, but there's like this weird snorting noise around me. Anyway, back to the ancestors. You want something that is a connection to the ancestor, whether it be something that belonged to them or something that reminds you of them. It's just a connection. And then you have a place for offerings. Well, what kind of offerings do you give to ancestors? Well, there's a lot of different things you can give. You can give mead, wine. Water is a great one, actually, because water is pure. Everything needs water, and there's this idea that water is this source of life. So by offering water to your ancestors, you're giving them a little bit of life, a little bit of power, so that they can come and either help you or speak to you or connect with you in some deeper way. There's a lot of people I know who would, even in today, when they put out their places for dinner, they leave an empty spot with plate and silverware and all that for their ancestors to come join them, and they serve them food, and that's their offering. I don't do that all the time. I do that on Samhain, Halloween. But it's something to do maybe on their birthday, or Beltane, Samhain. You could do it every day if you want, but that can be kind of wasteful, and with the way prices are today, might not be feasible. But yeah, doing something to say that you remember them, that they're still part of you, that without them you wouldn't be here. You want to keep that connection and give them something. And then there's prayer. You can pray to your ancestors.
Hail to those who have passed through the veil, from life to death, to earth from breath. Hail to those who suffered to gift me with blood. Hail to those who survived to gift me with body. Hail to those whose songs gift me with inspiration. Hail to those whom I know and loved in life, whose memory I carry with me like a word of comfort. Hail to those who left this land long ago, whose names I honor like a word of hope. Or, if I know not their names, whose lives I still honor. I live and love because you lived and loved. I speak and struggle because you spoke and struggled. You live in me, as I will live in those who come after me. Grant me the patience, O my beloved dead, to see the long view and remember that what I do affects million souls I will never know.
I know there's some modern Christian faiths that will say absolutely not, you can only pray to God. Well, I grew up Catholic, and growing up Catholic, you pray to God. You also pray to Jesus, and you pray to Mary, and you pray to the saints, and you pray to the angels, and you pray to your ancestors, your deceased loved ones. People, entities, anything on the other side, you pray to so that they can intercede on your behalf. Whether it be, they go to God or the gods or whatever you believe in and intercede on your behalf that way, or they step in the physical realm and kind of mess things up for you. And I use those words very carefully because of what happened to me. So I'm going to give you a little personal story. My grandfather, who I was very, very close to, he passed, must be 5-6 years ago now. My marriage ended about 5 years ago. Yeah, so 6 years ago since he passed, my marriage ended a year after. When I was ready to start dating again, I had the hardest time. I got friend-zoned, I got ghosted, people just didn't seem to want to be around me. I'd have great first dates and then they never talked to me again. No idea what was going on. Then I ended up talking to a psychic. I'm very iffy with psychics. I've met a lot of them, especially being involved in the paranormal, and most full of crap. Or they're not completely full of crap, but they exaggerate their own abilities. So talking to a psychic, they kind of need to prove themselves to me. Well, this guy proved himself. It was done over a Zoom call because it was during COVID, and I moved everything out of the camera's view so that he couldn't see anything and glean any information from what I had around me. The only thing that was in the camera view other than me was the corner of a red toolbox. He immediately told me that my grandfather was with me, and that my grandfather kept walking over to the toolbox. It was my grandfather's toolbox. It wasn't like it was a really old toolbox that he could make that assumption. It was a newer toolbox. It was only maybe 5 years old. But what he knew was my grandfather's. And so that gave him some credit. And then he told me, wow, you're really having a hard time with women, aren't you? Like, well, yeah, I am. And he goes, well, that's because your grandfather's interceding on your behalf and scaring them away. Why? Because they're not the right one. When you find the right one, he'll make sure that everything happens smoothly. And then he said that you either have already met or you're about to meet the woman you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Later that day, I had my second date with my now fiance, and she's the love of my life, and I can't imagine ever not being with her. So he hit the nail on the head, and Grandpa, thank you for doing what you did so that I could meet Tanya. So moving on, how can you speak with your relatives or your ancestors in the way of the Old Norse? Well, like I said, prayer. If you want to speak to them, prayer. Pray to them, talk to them. Go to their grave, talk to them there. Go to any cemetery. A cemetery is a sacred space. No matter what faith you are, a cemetery is a sacred space. Go there and speak to your deceased loved ones. Go to some place that was meaningful to them and talk to them. If you want to talk to your ancestors that you've never met, just sit down in a quiet place, come out into the woods, and just talk to them. If you want them to talk back in the Old Norse way, best thing for you to do is meditate. Find a quiet place, sit down, clear your head. Maybe I'll do an episode on meditation because there's a lot to dissect there. If you're capable of meditating on your own, great, do that. If not, maybe find a guided meditation on YouTube and follow that one. But through meditation, you could connect to the other side and talk to your ancestors. Moving forward into more modern times, what are some ways that you can speak to the dead, speak to your ancestors? Well, again, you go to a cemetery and talk to them. If you talk, they'll listen. Whether or not they talk back is up to them and what means you have available to you at that time for them to talk back. So let's start. This is getting into the more modern ghost hunting stuff, but let's talk about some ways that you can speak to your ancestors, like practically have them speak back to you. You know, going back to what I mentioned about my museum, Ouija boards. Look, Ouija boards are not bad. They're just a tool. Yes, you're opening up a door of communication, but you open that same door of communication when you go to a cemetery and to your loved one's tombstone and you talk to them there. It's the same door. All you need to do to be safe with a Ouija board is set your intention. Intention is everything. Look, we've talked about magic on this podcast before. So in magic, intention is everything. So set your intention. Don't just ask for anything to come out and talk to you. Ask for the spirits of the location you're in. Ask for a specific ancestor or specific spirit you want to talk to. Ask for your ancestors to come through. And if there's a specific one you want, ask for that one. But yes, you can use Ouija boards to talk to a deceased loved one or an ancestor. If any of you listening have issues with Ouija boards, put comments down in, write a comment down in the comment section, and if I get enough of them, I'll do a whole episode on Ouija boards, even though that's not a Norse thing. Although I do have a Norse Ouija board. I'm getting off topic. Other ways that you can, simple ways that you can talk to or have the dead speak back to you. You can use dowsing rods. You can use pendulums. And then going into the very modern, like the ghost hunting world, having a lot of the tools that you see on the ghost hunting shows, things such as REM pods or cat balls. There's these little cat toys. They light up when you shake them. They're one of my favorite ghost hunting tools. You just put them out there. They take a lot for them to go off. So when they start going off, when you ask questions, it's great. But you can use these tools to ask yes/no questions, or ask a question and say, hey, if this is true, can you set this device off? If you have multiple devices, it's, hey, set this device off for yes, this device off for no. So that's all some of the modern ways. You could take a digital recorder or even your cell phone and ask questions. Do an EVP session. So what you want to do is get some kind of recorder, whether it be on your phone or a standalone recorder. Ask a question, wait 15-ish seconds before you ask another one. And after like 5 or 6 questions, go back and listen to it. And listen closely. Sometimes it's really hard to hear it, but they can speak to you that way. You can use things such as the spirit box, which is a radio that cycles through the stations very, very quickly. You're going through anywhere from 5 to 10 stations per second. So you shouldn't get any words coming through there. And sometimes we get words coming through there. And so the spirits can manipulate that to speak to you. One of my favorite ways to speak to the dead is an app on the phone. I don't trust the phone apps for ghost hunting. I don't. A lot of them are fake, and those that aren't fake, I have no way of knowing whether or not they're legit or not. Except for this one. This is the Necrophonic. This is the only app that I trust. It uses a sound bank. What they are they're recordings from EVP sessions they're just snippets of it that are then inverted, so you don't get any actual words from them. But somehow spirits can go in, manipulate it, and make it say stuff to you. It's really cool. It has proven itself over and over and over again. A great example of this is we were doing an investigation for a couple in New York. They were a Jewish couple. We pulled out the Necrophonic, and with the family we're asking questions, and I thought it was just speaking gibberish. And I look over at the family, and their jaws are all hanging open. Like, what's going on? And they said, well, it's speaking Hebrew. I don't know Hebrew, so I didn't know that's what it was speaking. And so they translated what it was saying, and basically it was a spirit that attached himself to the husband, and he was looking for a specific prayer to be said in Hebrew, a Jewish prayer of the dead or something like that. So they recited the prayer. All of a sudden we get thank you come through the Necrophonic, and then gone. He's gone. That was really interesting. We've gotten German come through there while we were in what used to be a German speakeasy. We get direct answers to questions. It's proven itself over and over again for years. It's the only one I trust. It costs like $10, I think. It's worth it if you want to talk to the dead. And the Necrophonic is the prime. That and the cat balls are the two things I primarily told James to do when I met him a couple weeks ago. James, if you're watching, hopefully this gave you some other options. Other things you can do is you can go to psychics and mediums. However, do your research before you go to them, because, like I said, a lot of them are frauds, or they're not a fraud, but their ability is here, but they claim it's up here. So take anything from a medium or psychic with a grain of salt until they prove themselves to you. And give them zero information, because the frauds are really good at taking a little bit of information and gleaming a lot of information out of it. So watch what you say around them. But I mean, that's talking to the spirits in a nutshell. Going back to the Old Norse, there is one other spirit interaction that I want to talk about, and I have one of these, and I forgot to bring it with me out into the woods. So I'll throw a picture of it up on the screen for those watching this on YouTube. It's a bone or an antler with a hole drilled in it, and what you do is you sit at a crossroad. Do not sit in the middle of an intersection. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. I'm not responsible for you getting hit by a car. But if you sit in a crossroad, whether you be out in the woods like I am, in a place where two trails intersect, where two hallways intersect in a building, anywhere where there's a crossroad, you sit in the middle, take a few deep breaths, and then you look through that hole in the antler or the bone, and they say you're supposed to be able to see spirits start walking around. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you do this, you cannot put it down until they leave. Once you can see them, they are aware of you. So if they're malevolent in any way, if you just freak out, drop the thing, you're done, you get out of there, they're gonna follow you, or so the stories go. To be safe, what you do is you sit there and you don't react, you don't speak, you just sit there and let them wander off. And then when the coast is clear, then you can say thank you, put it down, get up, and walk away. I've only tried it once. I didn't see any spirits. So what I'm telling you is based off the stories I read about it. I don't have any real first-hand practical information on it. But if I get more, I'll do more on it. I'll make an addendum to this episode with that information. But that's what I have for talking to the spirits. So remember, do not forget your ancestors. Without them, you wouldn't be here. They are very important to your being, and they deserve your respect. And talk to them, leave them offerings. Do not forget your ancestors. It's just, without them, your life wouldn't be here. You owe them everything. So, thank you again. I don't know when the next episode will be. I don't know what it will be on. As I said at the beginning, life's kind of hectic right now, but I'll do something at some point. I definitely want to do some more work with building up my biking gear. Been working on some of that. So maybe I'll do an episode on some of the gear and walk you through everything I have and what I'm working on. If you want to do more hiking in this area, because this mountain is new to me. It's recently become accessible by the public, so I have a lot of exploring to do. It's a whole mountain for me to explore. I can't wait. So until next time, thank you, and may the gods keep you.